Hello and welcome to ProLab Studio. My name is Michael Gallion.
I'm Tony Giton.
And we are going to cover one of the most requested subjects in bird control that we got from our surveys. Like over the last year and a half, especially even before that when COVID started, we shifted to this online virtual format that's taken off huge for us. Luckily, we had our studio in place, the old studio, before COVID hit, and we had predicted that future training would just turn virtual, whether it's video, you're watching webcasting, or like in this case, a lot of our listeners are just hearing the audio of what we're presenting today. But the subject of closing bird deals is really the one that matters most in bird control, because everything that becomes before that is a waste of time and energy if you don't close your deals. And so what we've learned in the world of bird control, especially, for my assignment when I first came on board here, Cameron Riddell recruited me into this company now, going on 7 years now. But the point was that I had extensive sales background in other industries. I was not part of pest control, and they needed a fresh viewpoint coming from the outside on the sales aspect of bird control. One of the first things that Cameron said is, we've done these analytics, and what we've seen is that about 80% of the people that propose bird jobs will only close about 1 or 2 out of 10 deals.
Wow.
Yet the closers, the people that are doing most of the work, consistently close 80% or 8 out of 10 deals. In our sales class, we cover a lot about this, but in this format here, we want to kind of get down to the basics of it, to the point of it. And to answer this question that Cameron put to me, he says, Michael, I want you to figure out why there is such a difference between the closers. What are the closers doing that the others are not, perhaps? And it was really interesting what that revealed to me. It was one of the most interesting little research projects that I've ever done. It took me 2 years, my first 2 years, to go through tons of data and interview so many people, and to go back and look at proposals to come up with how to properly close all these bird jobs.
What'd you learn?
Well, okay, I'll just spill the beans right out of the gate. Here's what the study really revealed to me. And it was an interesting thing, was that the closers were doing everything that everyone else was, with the exception of one actual activity. And that was, after the proposals were submitted, they were intensive follow-up people. In other words, when they gave a proposal, and then the question is this: how long should we wait until after the proposal has been submitted before we follow up? Guess what closers do? They don't wait any time. They are of the mindset, when they go back with the proposal, by the way, in person, not electronically, very critical. They always go back in person. They have an ink pen for the wet signature, because they're going to have a deal signed off. That's their mindset. They're going in there. They're going to follow up immediately. Now, of course, that doesn't apply to all the situations. What I mean is, though, they give a proposal and they are looking to close the deal by removing objections. Like, why is this deal not going to close?
Let me ask you a question. When they submit that proposal, how good is that proposal good? How long is that proposal good for?
Well, that can vary depending on the company. I know with our company, we try to honor proposals that have been in the works, in the loop for a while. Like even after sometimes when we have annual price increase, and gosh, inflation now, prices go up, we'll still try to honor.
You know what I'm talking about. What I mean is, if you're an installer and you're submitting a proposal, should there be a time limit on that price? I can give you reasons why there should and why there shouldn't.
Okay.
It depends on your customer. And that goes back to knowing your customer and the communication you have with your customer.
I see. Well, for the sake, though, of this particular podcast about closing, the important takeaway from these closers is that they have the mindset that also, here's another thing. If they'll have a proposal, but they will have the proposal in such a manner that it gives good information, but not necessarily all the information, because they're going to kind of finish off the information at the close of the deal when they come back to try to close the deal. And the reason why is it ties into another podcast we did about closing jobs in phases, because they kind of have a mindset that they're likely going to have to give multiple options on the job. But here's the flip side of it, of that analysis. Here's the most important thing, Tony, that was amazing to me. Let's look now at, we talked about what the closers are doing, right? They go for the close.
Yeah.
They don't wait. They follow up immediately.
Yeah.
The people that were only closing one or two had this opposite mindset, and it went like this. I'm a PMP. I do the general pest, and now I have an opportunity to do a bird job. By default, somehow, the PMP thinks that this special project that's not part of the general contract is going to automatically be awarded to them because they're already doing the general pest. That's a big mistake right there.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. No way. As a matter of fact, they're less inclined to use the PMP in many cases because the PMP doesn't present themselves as bird specific.
Right.
They might kind of, as a footnote, say we include bird work, but there are a lot of PMPs that don't really emphasize their bird certification, and they're just like one of the many. But most importantly, this mindset would be to wait to hear back from the customer and not close the deal, and wait until they get a call back, which what I always tell this number, and I'll hand it back to you here. But this is a really good point, because I say that when you give a proposal to your customer, guess what? How far along you are in the sales process? You're at the 50%. You're only halfway done with the sale.
Yeah.
A lot of guys think they're 90% sold by giving a proposal. Guess what?
Right.
Closers know they're going to propose. They're halfway done with the sale, because the heavy lifting of closing the deal now is going to come from removing the objections that are revealed immediately after that proposal is submitted. Many objections could be like price. It could be that the customer had previous failure from sound deterrents, and here you are proposing sound deterrents. There could be a lot of different objections, but a closer is prepared and not afraid of objections. As a matter of fact, they want to be told no as long as they're told why they're being told no.
Yeah, these are all great points, and everybody's different, right? Everybody's going to have a little bit of a different approach, and a lot of that has to do with your customer. What is your customer's background in this whole process? You know, are they the decision maker? Have they had previous fails? All of these things kind of come into play when you're running them through filters of your approach with your customer and why. But I really believe that it really comes down to communication. If you can get your customer to shake their head up and down, and I've mentioned this before, and say, I get it. I understand how my problems started, and I understand now how to stop it. How am I going to stop this? So what you're doing is great. I understand your strategy here. I understand your product selection. That's great. Where do I sign?
Right. Now notice what Tony is talking about here. A big mistake that people that are not experienced in sales will make is they don't get the customer to this point that he just described. And he was pretending to be the customer, saying, I understand all of your strategy.
Right.
Do not try to close the deal until the customer has fully absorbed your strategy. That's why with the proposal process, we sit down, we say, okay, so you understand that you have a nursery going on in the upstairs loft up there. Right. And so the stealth net, once we do the hazmat cleanup of that area, we're going to put out that fire of breeding that's constantly happening. Now, does that all make sense? And the customer says, oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. If they say, well, I don't really understand, and whatever, fill in the blank, you're not ready to close. Don't think about closing. You're going to make sure that Okay, what don't you understand about stealth net? Well, you talk about the hazmat cleanup, but we don't understand. Do you net it off first and then you do the hazmat? Because it seems to me, Bert,
Right.
that's an easy
Right.
objection. Of course, you're a professional, but you don't think that every objection is a no deal. Like, it's not going to be a deal breaker. They need clarification. The bird work to them is so foreign. And the guy that's getting the opportunity to try to solve it, he's just sitting there going, oh my God, I don't know any of this. I'm getting 3 proposals from different companies.
Right.
One guy's talking about plastic owls. This guy's got sound deterrents. And this guy's talking about a net. And the net makes sense to me because it creates a wall. All right, so the net all makes sense. And then they say yes. Now, in addition to it, we have some shock track above your dock doors, because we saw that was a heavy roosting site, and they're coming in through the door. Now, does that make sense? Yes, that totally makes sense.
Right.
And then we also have eagle eye. Yeah, you know what? I don't get why you have to have eagle eye if you have the shock track. That's okay. Closers love these conversations.
Explain it, and it's
They
really
love
easy
that.
to explain that sort of thing. You know?
Exactly.
You know, because it's not always a sunny day. Let's talk about why you want to back up eagle eyes, because it's not always sunny. How many eagle eyes have we sold in Portland, Oregon in the last 5 years?
We sell a few, believe it or not, somehow, but we don't recommend them there.
Maybe 2 or 3.
We don't really get enough sunshine.
So
out there,
yeah, so you want to back up eagle eyes, you know, when you can. Either I love to use flex track. A lot of people can use optical gel. They can use spike or bird wire, depending on what species you're dealing with. But back to what you were talking about. Yeah, I mean, you've got to get your customer to the point where they completely understand. This is such a niche industry that we're in. And it's really easy to get confused, and there's so many different variables. So if you explain your strategy to your customer and simplify things in a way where they kind of get it, that's going to go a long ways
Right.
with you closing deals.
Now, one thing that I see with what I'll call a weak closer or an inexperienced closer is that when the customer is going through the proposal and they say something like, yeah, you know, I don't quite understand why you need eagle eye and shock track, they immediately get rattled and think, oh my God, I'm going to have to get rid of the eagle eye. I'm going to, no. Yeah. Listen. You're going to go in very strong in your position, and you're going to simply explain, listen, you asked me, I know you've had previous failure. You told me you wanted this to be solved, and you don't want to deal with the problem anymore. So, customer for you there.
Yeah, exactly.
We're always, this is part of it, guys.
That's right.
We
People
always
calling in.
This is the high season too, so we will get back to that customer in just a minute here. We're almost finished, but the point is that you go in strong with your proposal. You aren't thinking that you're going to change anything about your proposal, because guess what you've done? If you've done it right, you put together a proposal that is exactly the best strategy for that situation.
Yeah.
No more, no less. You aren't
Right.
throwing a bunch of bells and whistles in that aren't needed. You're being
Right.
honest. You're doing it the best way. Now, if you have done a lot of redundancy to really bolster, right, multisensory, having shock track
Yeah.
and then visual. With that multisensory really
Audio,
works, right?
taste.
Right?
Oh,
All
yeah.
of these things combining have an exponential effect. You need to explain that to the customer, that you have exponential power. In other words, each deterrent gets a little more powerful when it's put alongside an opposing deterrent that has a different sensory effect.
That's a great point, Michael. A lot of people will call and say, hey, I put up an audio deterrent outside. Why did it fail?
Right.
You know, so
Right.
usually on the outside of a structure, we want to create a really uneasy environment. Audio deterrents are great add-ons, are really good add-on after you've identified all their comfort zones on the outside and applied the products that need to be applied. Could be, you know, spike, flex track. We could even have our little dispensers with methylphenolate up there. We can have the visual deterrents with eagle eyes, and then you throw in an audio. Why do you throw in an audio? Just because you're creating another atmosphere here. You're taking what's desirable about this area and taking all that away.
Right, you're adding another sensory. You're creating more multi-sensory effect, which is, you know, as we know with optical gel, that device is combining sensories into one, which makes it a fascinating product. Now, let's talk about we do the proposal, like we just did, we explain the proposal. Now the customer, they understand the net, they understand the shock track, they understand the eagle eye. They're all in favor, they get it, exponential effect. Then they come to the bottom line, right? Now we're going to talk about the numbers. This is part of the sales process where closers, really good closers, don't fare at all. They're ready and they love doing what they're doing, and they so expect people to reject pricing that it's just automatic, and they're not even fazed by that, so they don't even think about it. But what will happen is then the customer then starts to reveal the most important thing, objections. It's okay. You want them to have objections. If you're getting objections, guess what? They're telling you the secrets. They're giving you the tools that you need to close that deal, and they're confiding in you that, gosh, you know, if only this and that were in place, we could close this deal. They want the problem solved, but budget might come into play. This is where we get into different phases, perhaps. We have a whole separate podcast on closing deals in phases. So make sure after you check this particular podcast out that you want to explore that, because this is an added element to this. But one of the things that I love to teach in the class, once you've done all of these proposal elements and the customer has acknowledged that they agree with everything, here's a great question to ask them at that point. Because guess what? You're ready to close. You're at the point. They've acknowledged that your strategy makes sense to them. Now the last thing is to sign off. And here's a question that you should ask, and it goes just like this, word for word. Is there any reason we cannot move forward with this project right now? Now, let me say it again. Is there any reason we can't move forward with this project right now? And then you do exactly what Tony is doing right now and what I'll do next.
Yeah.
Nothing. You say nothing. And why do we do that? Why? It's not a manipulation, guys. This might seem like a car sales trick. It's not, because you ask a very honest question. Is there any reason we can't move forward with this project right now? Customer is thinking of any reason they can't move forward. And at that point, one of two things will happen. To your surprise, if you worded it the way that I just did, a lot of them will say, no, there's no reason, let's get to it. At that point, you stop selling. I see guys continue to talk about, well, that shock track sure is going to do the trick. Yeah, sure. No, stop all that. Just go, okay, we can get going tomorrow. We got to do the cleanup up there. And you start talking about actions of, now, more times than not, though, they're going to say, you know what, Michael, this is 45 grand for this whole project. I mean, we were talking, we had another proposal for spikes that was like $7,000. Yeah. Right? That can happen, right? And this is where we got it now. So let's finish with that, Tony. Well, the other guy has a proposal for $7 grand for bird spikes. Now, what do you?
Unfortunately, history has taught us that in this industry, you get what you pay for. Yeah. On these larger projects that go out to bid, you're going to find that it's pretty common that you get some guy who's, just some new guy that's going to come in with a real low bid. And unfortunately, a lot of times that's very attractive to the end user, and they try it that way. Yeah. Usually comes around, circles around, and to get, bite them in the, and so they will come back eventually. Now, this is a customer that is now a little bit damaged, right? Because they're a little bit fearful of maybe the next guy that's coming in with the right way to do it, because this guy came in and just deceived them. So that happens a lot. So in this industry, don't be afraid to be in the middle of the pack. Don't be afraid to be in the ballpark. And with your bids, you're going to find those guys. You're going to find the high guy, the guy that's way up here, and then you're going to get that low ball guy. It's pretty common.
So I'm going to end with one last piece of information that I give in the sales training class, and that is something that we call last look. Now, last look, what I mean by this, especially when the customer says, you know what, Michael, we're collecting up different bids and we'll get back to you. And that's a very natural thing, and that happens a lot. So a lot of times they're closed bids where you're not going to be able to do anything but submit a bid and hope that you get it, and that's a whole different thing. Most of the bird jobs do not go that direction unless they're massive projects that are government related. But when we're talking about the average guy out there that wants to close his deals, if he's really good and he really believes in what he's doing, he's going to tell this customer, he says, listen, my proposal that I presented is going to work. I'm a bird barrier certified installer, and we put guarantees on these products. Sounds like you've got other bids. You've got Sketchy Bob's Bird Control, to putting spikes up, right? And we talked about that earlier. You were asking about spikes, and I told you that the birds that are nesting are just going to nest right in those spikes. So what you need to do is do me a favor. Let me have last look. And what we'll do as a free service to you, you trust me, we've done your general pest for a while, you're collecting up all these bids. Let me have last look. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to honestly evaluate the bids, and I'm going to help you to go back on these bids to get guarantees. I'm going to have you go back to Sketchy Bob. I'm going to have you put in writing that says, in 90 days, if the birds are not gone and they're nesting, I get a full refund. And guess how fast Sketchy Bob's bid disappears from the mix?
Right.
As soon as you force that issue of guarantee. Because the thing is, what Tony is right about is you don't want to be, you could be in the middle of the pack, you could even be the most expensive one in the situation. But here's the thing that the customer doesn't want to have happen. Any dollar amount that fails. So $7,000, a lot less than my 45 grand. But that $7,000, if it fails and there's no recourse, that's $7,000 in the toilet, and the person who approved it is going to face some heat. They would rather get guarantees, and it can even be a higher amount, and they'll close that deal instead.
If you're the end user and you're getting 5 guys and they're all bidding on the same project, what's really going to give you a head up on your competition is how you describe your service, how you present your service, what sort of warranties you're offering, and how you simplify it for them. This really goes back to the communication aspect. If you can get your customer to shake their head and go, that makes sense to me, yes, I want to do that, that's the winning bid right there.
Okay, now one last thing. A lot of guys out there, especially I get this from branch managers and regional sales managers. But Michael, we have to submit a proposal. There are 3 other proposals going in there. And they're going to just get back to us. They're going to evaluate everything on their own. Let's talk about that. In that situation, what do you think is the difference between a winning proposal when you've got just 3 bids against each other from 3 major companies, and is it always going to be the low price in that situation? What is it about the proposal that can make yours stand apart from the rest so that they look at your bid compared to those other 2 and they go, wow, we really understand what's going on based on proposal A here. So what do you include in that?
Well, again, it starts with communication, and what's going to differentiate you from the other guys could be product selection and what products you're using. You might have an audio deterrent to back up your roof project. You might have Eagle Eyes, Bird Barrier exclusively carries the Eagle Eye visual deterrent, which in my opinion is the best visual deterrent on the market today. The other guys might not have Eagle Eyes. They might have, little teacups up there. So, it really depends on communication, product selection, and installation strategies when you're dealing with these issues.
All right, very good. I love doing this session. I mean, this is what I live for, man. I mean, because I have to say, of all my years with the company so far, the most rewarding thing is to include the sales portion into our training. Because what I find, Tony, so many of these poor guys that go through the evolutionary process of becoming a really good technician, they become a branch manager, then they say, you know what, I'm going to venture out, I'm going to start my own company, and something happens they didn't expect, and that is the manna from heaven disappears. When I say manna from heaven, it's this endless set of leads that come pouring down on them from this massive marketing machine that's giving them a whole list of leads to go pick and choose from. Well, now you've hit the ground, you're good at what you do, but now you got to sell, and you have no sales training. So what I've learned is that by giving these tips, and how much of this applies to everything. I mean, what we're talking about here isn't bird control alone. This is all about closing the deals properly, no matter what project you're talking about. This can apply to closing the general pest account in the same way. There are factors that come into play with sales that are so consistent. They're the rules and laws of the principles behind sales. Sales is nothing more than a transfer of enthusiasm. I firmly believe that. When you transfer enthusiasm that your solution is the best, the customer feels it.
Yeah.
They want to work with you.
I would encourage the commercial installer that's, has a couple years under his belt, if they're running into some hiccups, if they're running into some things, call us, call me, let me look at your project. I will explain to you exactly the best route, how to take to close a deal.
Yeah, Tony, one last thing that I think I've touched on this with you, but what I'm seeing a trend more that what I love doing is, like, look at us right now. We're on camera. We've got audio here also, but I have people that go in to close the deals. I had a major brand recently with a pest control company in California, had this huge opportunity. And we proposed a lot of the strategy, and they said, Michael, would you be able to come in on the meeting? And it was a virtual meeting because during COVID, and they said, can you sit in on this FaceTime? Actually, it was a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And I sat quietly as part of it. They introduced me, and then they went through everything. And as soon as the tough questions came up that were bird related to the strategy, there I was, able to answer those objections. And I helped them close the deal just by being there. Guys, use us for that. Oh my gosh, you could have Tony, you could have myself, you could have Ray, Cameron Riddell even can. If we're going to talk about closing deals, don't think that you can't have us be part of that process, speaking on your behalf. We want you to close every deal you can do. That's what this session was about, closing the sales deals. Right? Last thoughts, Tony?
I'm just happy to be here. Thank you so much again. This is all new to me, and thank you out there. And
it's not new to you. The means of communicating may be new to you, but Tony, you've got years of experience behind you, and this is so valuable to these technicians out there. This is the way we close deals. And salespeople in pest control, regional managers, branch managers, this is what it all comes down to with this session today.
Reach out to us to help you with to verbalize how to close a deal with your end user. So we're here to help. So give us a call.
Okay, another great podcast from ProLab, Pro-L-A-B-B, Learn at Bird Barrier, right? So I'm Michael Gallion. I do business development.
Tony Giton, commercial specialist.
And the bird is going to fly out.
The bird is the word.
There we go. Thanks, man.